Right, you're all set.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lindsay Josephs, and I work on the higher education team here at OpenStax. I'm responsible for our higher education marketing campaigns. Anthony, I'll pass it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Anthony Palmiotto. I'm the Director of Higher Ed at OpenStax. I work a lot with faculty and folks at institutions and on the development of the resources. I'm also, just want to say, I know not everybody's from New York, but I'm from and in New York. I live in, OpenStax is based in Houston, Texas, but I live in Rockland County and just about 5 minutes away from SUNY Rockland. Been all over the state, so glad to be here taking part in this.
Wonderful. I grew up in Connecticut. I feel like I have to put that out there,
Close.
like show I'm like affiliated in some way. I live in North Carolina now though, but love the Northeast, love New York. So happy to be here. And today we'll be talking about how you can utilize OpenStax's free OER textbooks to equip your students with the workforce skills of tomorrow. Today's agenda, so we'll first cover what OpenStax is, then we'll dive into an overview of the three books that we'll be focusing on today, our nursing series, Workplace Software and Skills, which is like a business computer applications book, and then Introduction to Python Programming, which is one of our newest textbooks and our first ever computer science textbook. Then we'll share some information on how you can begin using OpenStax in your course, and we'll end with the Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we're more than happy to address them. So what is OpenStax? So a lot of folks here are probably familiar with OpenStax, so I'll keep this nice and succinct. But as Anthony mentioned, OpenStax is based in Houston, Texas. We are an educational initiative of Rice University. As a nonprofit initiative, we sustain our operations through philanthropic support. It's how we create our textbook library, how we maintain it, and how we create new resources. We receive philanthropic support in a variety of different ways, but some ways include grants from foundations like the Gates Foundation, donations from individual supporters, governmental grants, and mission support fees from our technology partners, who are ed tech providers that we partner with to offer low-cost technology alongside our free books. We are a mission-oriented organization, and our mission is to improve educational access and learning for everyone. We aspire to provide an amazing education that's accessible for all. Our main area of work involves publishing a library of over 70, which is so exciting, 70 free peer-reviewed OER textbooks. Since we published our first textbook all the way back in 2012, we have saved students over $2.9 billion in textbook costs, which is a feat we're super proud of and is something that we would not have been able to accomplish if it weren't for instructors and librarians and OER advocates like yourselves. OpenStax textbooks look a lot like traditional textbooks that are out there on the market. So for instance, all of our books are designed to align with standard course topics and outcomes and to align with the standard scope and sequence of their respective courses. All of our books are written by experienced and expert faculty. And additionally, these folks are part of our extensive peer review and revision process. This ensures that our books are up to date, clear for students to understand, and representative of diverse student audiences. This is where our books are a little bit different than traditional textbooks. So OpenStax's books are published in multiple formats. So our books are available for free on our website in a web view format and also as a downloadable PDF. The web view is the format that we recommend since it's the most up-to-date and interactive, but the PDF is the same as the web view, but it's particularly beneficial for students who lack reliable internet access throughout the course of the semester. Additionally, we publish our books at a low cost in print. The reason why we do this is that for accessibility reasons or maybe for personal preferences, some folks prefer having a hard print copy. These books typically go between $18 and $60, and the cost that we sell them at is the cost that it takes for us to produce and distribute them. Our books undergo regular errata and currency updates. Like many OER, OpenStax is a very collaborative organization. So our textbooks are written by experienced and expert faculty and subject matter experts, but we welcome our readers in the greater open community to submit errata suggestions for our subject matter experts to review. So if there's a typo in our book or something is out of date or there's a correction that needs to be made, folks can submit a correction on our website. We publish all the corrections on our website and we let folks know if we made this correction or if we didn't, why we made that decision. Because our books are available in this web view, they're really easy for us to keep up to date. We typically update our books 2 times per year, once for the fall semester and once for the spring semester, to ensure that the content is current and up to date for students. Lastly, and the reason why we're all here today is OpenStax's textbooks are an example of open educational resources. They are openly licensed, and since they're openly licensed, they're also customizable. Our textbooks are designed to be used as is. You can just open it up and start teaching with it right after this session. But we also know some folks like to customize to meet their unique course needs. That is an option for you, and our open licenses allow folks to do that. We offer more than just free textbooks. Each textbook from OpenStax comes with free instructor resources. These resources vary by book, but includes things like test banks, lecture slides, skills checklists, book customization tools, and more. We also offer OpenStax Assignable, which we won't dive into a lot in this session, but it's essentially a product by OpenStax that allows folks to integrate OpenStax readings and assessments into their learning management system like Canvas or Moodle. So this allows folks to really streamline the OpenStax process for their students and host all OpenStax resources for their course within their institution's LMS. We also offer free student resources, our tech partners, which I mentioned earlier, articles on our blog, free webinars, and our support center. OpenStax has an incredible customer support team, and they are here to answer folks' questions and help you if you encounter any issues or challenges with using your OpenStax book or resources. Now we'll dive into an overview of the 3 main textbooks that we'll be focusing on today. And I'll pass it over to Anthony to talk about our nursing series.
Thanks so much, Lindsay, and thanks everybody again for joining. So, as Lindsay made clear, we're developing OER and we're trying to make it easy for faculty to adopt, for instructional designers, course designers, and others to design and redesign to incorporate into platforms and so on. Because we know that teaching, especially in courses like nursing and so on, it's pretty integrated process, and there's a lot of other considerations beyond the book, including just what people do in their class every day, and then also what students are doing for homework and so on. So the nursing series is a great example of one where we as we typically do, took a very deep accounting of what faculty were teaching in the course, what the directions of the programs were going, what new challenges were emerging, what existing challenges, how had they been addressed, and so on. And we did a discovery phase. We did a lot of research, maybe for about 8-10 months before we started developing anything, and decided on which books were the most important to do, to cover which courses, and what had the most impact. And we came up with these 8 textbooks that we see listed here. Clinical skills, fundamentals, maternal newborn, med surg, nutrition, pharmacology, pop health, and psychiatric mental health nursing. There's a listing of those. I don't remember them myself. So, but they're available on the OpenStax page under subjects in nursing, and you can take a look. And as Lindsay said, just like the rest of our other resources, they're available at no cost to students. I'll go into what's in them in a second, but they're available at no cost to students. They're available in these different formats. The ebook, the online ebook, is the most current, the most accessible, but we have these other versions that are available. That Word document version, just again, is not just the manuscript or anything like that. It's a final output of the final version of the book that's re-output into Word for customization. We don't expect anybody to really start from the beginning of page 1 and go to page 953, as is the case in one of the books, and re-edit anything. But if you were editing a chapter or moving things around, Word isn't the most technical version, but it's also sometimes the easiest, especially for faculty. Accessibility is really important to us. Every thing is in that experience, in that online experience, is WCAG AA compliant. That's the ebook. The PDF is a little less compliant. Obviously, print is not fully accessible, depending on how you're getting it and so on. They're really well illustrated, original illustrations, and others that we've worked with others to create. And they have these ancillaries, as mentioned. So kind of just about what's in these books. They were developed to consider. I guess we can go to the next slide. Yeah. So one of the things that changed in nursing over the past few years was the release of the American Association of Colleges of Nursing's Essentials, which is a revised curriculum and set of standards that they are seeking nursing programs to align to. And just like any set of standards that comes from an organization, even though there were many nursing faculty, nursing researchers across the country, including New York and other places that were involved in this, implementing a set of standards is not simply let's change some learning objectives in a syllabus. There's a lot that goes into it. So we made the textbooks better aligned to it, but also considered what are people doing in their courses every day. The essentials alignment might say X, and the way that it's explained in a classroom says Y. And so we're sort of representing both in our books, where these are teachers and faculty who are interpreting the essentials in the books and making them clear. The other thing that's really important in nursing programs, as many of us know, and as we heard over and over again in the development, is the NCLEX prep, the certification test that nurses have to take to become licensed. And so the books, all of them, are full of these pretty consistent features and elements that are aligning to some of the question types and the other sort of ways of thinking and considering nursing and nursing situations and nursing decision making and clinical judgment that occur in a nursing situation. And that is what the NCLEX is really focused on. It's not, just going on multiple choice about certain facts and diseases and ways of that diseases present or injuries or anything like that. It is helping nurses and showing that they've learned how to make decisions, how to take the data and information they're getting and apply it. It's actually a really wonderful way of teaching that we all try to get to in critical thinking, and it's pretty apparent throughout the books. So we have these elements: the unfolding case studies, clinical judgment, the safety standards, clinical tips, patient conversations. That's scenarios or for how nurses talk to different people involved in the healthcare process, including the patient, their family, their caretaker, and so on, and then a number of assessments. So it's a pretty robust offering to show that we're aligning to these standards, but also equipping the nursing students with everything they'll need. And we'll just have probably like a couple of examples on the upcoming slides regarding. Here's an unfolding case study. Now you'll notice here that this appears, this gray background and everything like that. This is how it appears, in the online version in order to make it, really work and function in terms of, any type of reader and everything like that. It will resize, the contrast is good and so on. But what happens in these is that, the nurse is getting information and then they're being asked questions, and then subsequently in the chapter they'll get more information and then they'll be asked answering more questions, responding to what's happening sort of in real time. And we can mimic these in multimedia, but this is how sort of it appears in the text. Other elements that we're representing is the clinical judgment measurement model. This is a heavily evidence-based approach to making positive, effective judgments and taking in that information. These recur throughout the textbook. Nursing instructors will be very familiar with this model. It's presented in each of the textbooks in sort of a theoretical framework, sort of a decision tree, and then it comes through in these situations over time, related to whatever the chapter at hand is. Another example are the QSEN competencies. These are the safety standards that nurses have to learn and align to, and they have to sort of start to integrate these. They'll be important in their clinical work and also on the NCLEX and other examinations they need to take. And of course, it's just important for them to know how to make sure patients are safety, how even the nurses are maintaining their own safety, and so on. So these are presented over, repeatedly and so on. And I might have one more example. Yeah, so something about the patient conversations, right? Just sort of, a back and forth scenario of these conversations. And the important thing here is that these were all advised on, these were included in the books because nursing faculty told us they needed them. And these align with similar types of features in those, non-open books, the commercial textbooks and so on that nursing instructors are pretty used to using. So, if they're moving from a commercial textbook to an OER, in this case, they'll see a lot of that parallelism that goes on here, and they'll understand, okay, here's what I did with my old textbooks, here's what I can do with my new textbook, and have those resources available to them. And I think that's it for the next. So we'll answer questions more later, and glad to talk more. But Lindsay's gonna talk about workplace software and skills.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. Workplace Software and Skills is OpenStax's version of a business computer applications textbook, and this book is designed to flexibly support a variety of courses covering computer literacy, Microsoft Office, and Google Suite applications. Our research has shown that about 55% of business computer application courses focus solely on Microsoft Office applications, meaning that nearly half of courses focus either solely on Google Suite applications or on both Microsoft Office and Google Suite. So we wanted to ensure that our book would meet the needs of instructors covering those diverse array of courses. You can see how this comes into play in our table of contents and in our chapter outlines. So for example, here on the left, we have our chapter about creating presentations. So the first section within chapter 6 is about presentation essentials. Then there's a few sections on presentations in Microsoft PowerPoint. And then there's a few sections on creating a presentation in Google Slides. So instructors can pick and choose the sections that they would like to teach with, depending on the applications that their course covers. Of course, there's not always equivalent applications. And for instance, Microsoft Excel has a lot more advanced functions than Google Sheets does. And we make sure to note that in the book and then cover those more advanced functions in Excel. Like all OpenStax books, our book, including Workplace Software and Skills, is updated twice a year to ensure that the book is current and up to date. We know that with software releases or new changes, there may be changes in how Excel looks or changes in different Google Docs functions. So we'll make sure to reflect those changes in updated versions of our books. At its core, Workplace Software and Skills prepares students for the workforce because, as you know, depending on if you're like a Microsoft school or a Google school, you use these platforms every single day in the workplace and in school. So it prepares students for the workforce by equipping them with these critical technological skills. But how exactly does the book do that? So our book does this through 4 main things: guided practice, studio learning, scaffolded activities, and real-world examples. The book covers both the basic and advanced features of Microsoft Office and Google Suite so that students of all skill levels can learn the skills necessary to succeed in their jobs once they graduate. Additionally, the real-world examples is really critical. We display real-world and real career examples over and over again to ensure that students understand how to apply these tools to a variety of contexts and to a variety of disciplines and different jobs. Some other features that the book offers that helps prepare students for the workforce includes the spotlight on ethics, the final project, and the Mac tips. The final project is essentially a cumulative project that allows students to apply what they've learned in the previous chapters to a final project. And this final project is really great for putting on resumes to show employers and potential, like if students are applying for internships, to show potential employers that they have the Microsoft Excel or the Microsoft Office and the Google Suite skills necessary to succeed in that area. The Mac tips are also super beneficial. It's about like 60% of students use a Mac product or a Mac computer. So the Mac tips can help guide students in the right direction if something or a function appears differently on a Mac as opposed to a PC. Students are made aware of that in the book so that it helps students to overcome that hurdle of why do things look different on my computer. And of course, because it's openly licensed, students can access this book forever. So if they're 10 years into the workplace and they're having difficulty figuring out some advanced function in Microsoft Excel, they can always go back to our book and get a refresher on how to complete that function. Practice exercises are really essential for ensuring that students have that hands-on experience. And we include a variety of practice exercises at the end of all of our chapters. As you can see here, this is an example of some practice exercises for our spreadsheets chapter, chapter 9, and students are able to actually utilize Google Suites and Microsoft Excel and apply what they've learned to completing exercises using those different platforms. This is an example of one of the real world applications that we have. Budgeting is a super popular topic for students. There's so many TikTokers that show like how college students should budget and invest and become financially literate. So our real world applications are things like personal finance that appeal to students. They're things that students can look at and be like, oh, like this can help me not only in the workforce, but also in my day-to-day life. It makes students have a personal connection with the material and feel excited to use these tools. Right here, you can see one of the examples of the Mac tips, like towards the top of the screen. These are shown throughout the book and just provide some guidance for students when something on your Mac may look different than it does on a PC. The last book that we'll be covering today is Introduction to Python Programming. This book uses hands-on activities to teach basic programming concepts, teach problem-solving skills, and teach the Python coding language. This book is really unique in that there's this approach of having less text and more activity. We really want students to gain hands-on experience with Python. So we designed our chapters so that they follow this pattern of we have some learning objectives, we have brief text and video animations, then we have learning questions followed by programming practice. And this programming practice is designed to foster active learning and student engagement. It focuses on interactivity in practice. So as a result, the material is often less concise with that less text and more activity. This book prepares students for the workforce in a variety of ways. There are video-based animations in every single chapter in the book, and these videos show step-by-step how Python code is written and executed. These videos describe Python syntax, how variables are assigned, how code executes line by line, and more. We also have interactive learning questions that enhance students' critical thinking. The book actually provides explanations for these problems at the end of the book. And they don't only provide an explanation of why the right answer is right, it also explains why the incorrect answers are in fact incorrect. Mistakes are inevitable when learning any sort of new coding language, and Python is no exception. So with these explanations, we hope that students will be able to identify common mistakes and apply that knowledge to avoid making those mistakes in the future. The most exciting part of the book for me is this one-of-its-kind integrated code runner. There's an integrated code runner in the book that allows students to write and test their own programs within the book itself. This ensures that students are getting the Python practice that they need to successfully learn the Python language and subsequently apply it to actual Python problems. And of course, like workplace software and skills, our Python book also includes a variety of scenarios and exercises that reflect programming applications in many careers. It doesn't only show how Python is important for computer science majors, it shows how it's important for students studying data science, students going into the social sciences, students handling large volumes of data, and more. Right here, you can see an example of one of the video-based animations that we have. Students are able to watch this video to reinforce what they just read previously in this section. This is followed by some of those interactive learning problems. So in chapter 3, for example, these are 2 of the 4 problems that are in the list subsection. And at the end of the book, you can see the explanation. So you can see that not only does it list the right answer, but it also explains why that answer is right and why the other answers are not right. And of course, we have the integrated code runner. As you can see here, students are given a set of instructions. They can input their code, they can run it, and then they're given the output right in the online book itself. It's easy for students to reset it, and the solution is also initially hidden, so students can see the solution and then hide it. This is really great because not only do students have that Python practice, they can just do it right in the book. They don't have to go to another website. They don't have to pay for some sort of other software. They can just do it right in the book and get that practice then and there and apply what they've just learned to actual problems. I'm going to pass it over to Anthony to talk a little bit about how to begin using OpenStax in your course.
Sure. Thank you so much. So for you or for faculty or others who want to use the material, really the easiest way to use it is just to start using it. On our site, openstax.org, there's a subjects link. And then you can proceed directly to whatever the subject is at hand: math, business, nursing, computer science, and so on. That will bring you to a page with, a number of the books on it. And the social sciences page, for example, would have, psychology, sociology, anthropology, American government, and so on. You've probably been on catalog pages like this before. It's really meant to make that easy. And then you get to a book page, and it will tell you, the faculty and others, a little bit about the book. And then there will be a link to access the online version. A couple of things about the books is that they are the links to, whether it's the link to the first page in the book or a link to section 15.2. Those links are pretty persistent. If an instructor put that on a syllabus, put that in an LMS or something like that, that would stay intact, so that they could feel pretty that they're reliable and that they'll be able to get access to them, and their students will find the resources when they get there. So the books themselves are completely open and free. There's no necessity to log in or create an account. That goes for instructors and students. You'll see a prompt in there, hey, here's a little bit about OpenStax, donate if you can, and so on. That's something, we do, but that can be click pass. There's no restriction there. There are students, I'll start with the students. Students can create an account if they want to take notes and highlight, and that's so that it can, save those notes and highlights to their account. Instructors, we have those instructors resources that Lindsay talked a lot about. Those do require a account, and that's to differentiate between instructors and students, because those instructor resources will have a test bank, it will have answers to all the problems in the textbook, and so on. So instructors can register. We use a program called SheerID. It's the standard program in this arena to verify that instructors are instructors. If an instructor doesn't have any sort of association with the school, doesn't have a presence or something like that, they'll just be asked for additional documentation to fill it in, and then it happen pretty quickly. But for most faculty at schools, even adjuncts, as long as they're, there's some evidence that they're teaching, it typically takes, very, very, very little time. Of course, that time, like right at the beginning of the fall semester, August 25th it's a pretty busy day, and sometimes there's delays. So we just encourage everybody to start a little earlier. But that's how they get the instructor resources. Again, that's only required to get those instructor resources. Everything else is just open from the site. And then reporting your adoption. Of course, that's not required, but it really, really helps us to understand sort of who's using our textbooks. It helps in our funding and reporting. So to acquire more funding and share the impact. Some of our funding, we don't report on, a ton of detail. We don't sell any of this data. We don't share even as some of you may know, sometimes you don't even share back the instructors using with an institution if the instructors have said don't. We're very careful with data, but having those numbers of adoption really help. And then also, it also helps us support. We don't have a ton of resources for, additional marketing or trips or junkets and things like that. But if we know where there's a cluster, we know where there's growth potential or something like that, that can really help us to decide, where to put those resources, what conferences to go to, where to dig in, and things like that. So if it's possible, we ask that faculty or OER advocates, librarians, and others report their adoptions, and so on. And we're talking a lot about faculty here. Of course, this is all for students to use. This is all, these textbooks are geared towards students to use. But when we're speaking from the access point, we don't have a lot of reach into the students. It's not our audience. We're looking for faculty adoption. Once they evaluate the textbook and they decide, hey, this works for me, will work for my students, they can get it in. So that's where a lot of this is focused.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all
Great.
that information, Anthony. I shared some links in the chat
Thank you.
reflecting some of the topics that Anthony touched upon, like the adoption form and the link to create your instructor account. So we highly encourage you to take a look at those.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
we allocated, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say one thing. So the other thing is, so we say instructor account, like instructional designers, OER librarians, anybody in that role can get an instructor account too. So if it's helpful for you all, for anybody like that on your campus, certainly you can get access to. We'll give that access, of course. We're just trying to keep those ancillaries, those instructor facing ancillaries, out of the hands of students as much as we can. Sorry, Lindsay, no trouble.
No, that's good to know. Like any person, librarian, OER coord instructor has access to these resources. And even if you don't plan on teaching with them, we highly encourage you to create an instructor account anyways. All right, I see a couple of questions in the chat. So can you show how images and videos are incorporated? Sure, I am more than happy to. I'm going to stop sharing for a quick second, and then I'm going to show everyone the OpenStax website. Oops.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Yes, it's been developing, their initial books in 2012 were, they were online, they were accessible, they were usable, they had that PDF download, but definitely a lot of advancement since through a lot of great support. Thank you for saying that.
So I'm going to go to our computer science book. I'm going to go to Introduction to Python Programming. So all books are available for free on our site. You can view them online or as a PDF. So I'm going to show the online view since we're going to focus on those videos and images. They are embedded directly into the online version itself. So let's go to like chapter 3. We talked about that a bit. So we have the learning objectives, some basic information, then we have a checkpoint. These are YouTube videos. These are all available on the OpenStax YouTube channel, but they are directly embedded into the book itself. So if you just click play, as you see, we keep our books updated, but if we just click play, you'll be able to watch the video in the book itself, and you can also go to YouTube if you so desire to. In terms of images, I'm going to go to workplace software and skills to show that, but
Python isn't the most image rich, so
so as you can see, the images are just embedded directly into the book itself, including figures and captions. Students can copy the image if they need to, open it in a new tab if they want to, enlarge it, do whatever they need to do. But just like a traditional book, the images are embedded, explained, and connected with the material that we're discussing in the chapter and the section itself.
It's a great question. Do authors have control over the visual design? Pretty limited control. So in order to make sure that the books are will work in the platform and work on all these various devices, they'll work on a phone very, very well. They'll work on a tablet. They'll work on different size screens. That we have a pretty restrictive design in terms of what's available. So so what the authors are typically inputting on is, okay, I want this feature and this capability. So in the case of Python, for example, they wanted a code runner, they wanted to embed YouTube videos. And, they can sort of say, okay, here's how I want it to appear and so on. Whether the coloring background and that sort of stuff, that's a little bit into the weeds of the system of how that presents. And like we said, so you'll notice that in this version that Lindsay's showing, all these different features have these gray backgrounds, and oh, gee, that's not really that exciting. But that's, again, we keep it as plain as possible for a more, and you don't have to go to it if you don't want to, but like for a more textbook-like appearance, the PDF, these backgrounds might be green and blue and all different types of colors. And in the print version, there's a lot more of that sort of traditional textbook look to it. But even so with that, we definitely are focused on what's going to be the most usable and accessible, and also aligned to that updating, because the other aspect of what we do is, is when we're making these changes, if we make a correction, if we add something in, we're not doing anything significant. We're not adding a chapter or like 4 paragraphs in the middle, in the middle of a semester or anything like that. But even like, adding a line, subtracting a line, making a correction here or there, that can change some things. So we are also keeping an eye on that, the books, because we want to keep all the books flowing properly and so not breaking any sort of windows or anything. So there isn't a ton of control over that, but it's a very detailed design process that we go through. And just so it's clear, all of these books are done like as projects within our sort of our team. So the authors are involved and they sort of set the guidance. Then the reviewers are all involved at every step of the way. But then we're taking these on as projects. They're not like in the way like submitted to us and say, oh, what do you do here or what do you do there? So it's a very intensive collaborative process.
Yeah, as you can see, like as Anthony said, it's very intensive, very collaborative, a really large group of people working on this. So for workplace software and skills, if you go in the preface, we have
Look at those New York people.
yeah, we have our senior contributing authors, our contributing authors, and so many wonderful reviewers. So a lot of eyes see this to ensure that it really does meet the needs of as many instructors and students as possible.
Yeah.
Anthony, do you want to talk a bit about the peer review process?
Absolutely, yeah. So as you're seeing here, Lindsay's showing the reviewers. Different books have different scopes of reviewers. I mean, some of them have 50 reviewers on them, and some of them, as we go into second editions, there's changes there and so on. Oh, that's so funny. Sorry, let's take a screen grab of that. How does the review process really work though? So we review at every stage of the process. So as I mentioned earlier, that before we even start a book, we'll go through 2 or 3 months of evaluation. Surveying, interviews, focus groups to determine sort of what is being taught in the course, what's being taught today, what needs to be taught tomorrow, how things are changing, what challenges people are facing. A lot of faculty are involved in that. Some students are involved in that as well, and others that might have input, like if in certain disciplines, especially industry input or something like that. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that's a great slide. So so that's that first part on this slide. That preparation and planning. In that process, that's often how one of the ways we identify the authors and the reviewers. We go out and we do further recruiting and onboarding and so on. But many of the people giving us that feedback early on end up being a part of the project in some way. When we get into the editorial development process, that we review at every stage. So basically, that writing design, the specifications, even the outline, we'll do the outline for every textbook. We'll have that reviewed. And then we get into and a lot of times that outline review is for, sort of course alignment and scope. And then what happens is after every draft of writing, as you can see here, first draft writing, peer review, editing, revision, do some art, then subsequent review. And we'll do that as many times as possible. Almost every chapter of every book gets about 2 rounds of review. Some get more beyond that, depending on, work on a computer science book right now, the intro computer science book that's had more. And we have different types of review as well. Sometimes it's not just us deciding, but the authors themselves or other reviewers say, you might need additional help here. You might this is a very specialized topic. You need to get this specific type of expert in this type of field to review this. The authors are very aware, and other reviewers by their comments make it pretty clear when we need to get extra review, and that could be on anything from a very specialized topic within the discipline, or about how the topic is relating to people with that it's affecting. So in the nursing book, as you can imagine, we had a lot of concerns about whether any of the language, any of the depictions, any of the narratives even were unintentionally stigmatizing anyone. So we wanted to make sure that the people representing those populations, both clients and patients, but also specialists, healthcare professionals, nurses, and others, were represented in that review. So that all will go in. Usually that level of review, that highly specialist review, will happen toward the end of that review process. And then, so that's again is essentially how it works. You can see in all of our books, we'll list out the reviewers, at least all those who want to be reviewed, which is mostly all of them. And it's pretty transparent. We look for diversity in reviewing of all types, type of school, geography. If people want to tell us about their, who they, their identity, we don't require all that. It's up to them, but we look for that, of course. And then other type of expertise. So we'll incorporate all that to try to get the widest possible feedback as we can. And then some of it gets down to length. I think our bio and our A&P book and some of those books have a lot of reviewers, and so this is actually a bit of a briefer book for us as workplace book, so it's a little bit on the low side in terms of reviewers, but you'll see those vary. Again, what just happens to be, we don't pick just because we're from the Northeast or anything, but a lot of great folks from New York who are taking part in this in this particular book, like right here, the authors from Lehman, and then a few from New York, NYU have taken part as well. Yes, we do pay our reviewers. We pay our authors and our reviewers. Yeah, I think some of you are saying that. Yes. With in terms of starting a project, so our program is we would need, we're unable to take on projects unless they're funded. So, but as I said earlier, we could on the arts question, we could always pursue funding. So if there is something that either you have a resource and you'd like to consider publishing it with us, first to say thank you for that, and we'd help in any way we can, whether it's us or whether in the long run it's maybe we're not the best option. We're glad to make intros, make connections, and work. We try to work with as many folks, many organizations as possible. And then, of course, if there is an opportunity to publish your work through us, and there's a way to just kind of cover some of the costs of that through a state grant or philanthropic or something, or some sort of thing like that, we'd be glad to take part. So feel free. I think Lindsay put our emails above there, so feel free. I guess in that area, that's probably best to send my way, or on the editorial side. So thanks again, Lindsay, and be glad to dig in. And we are right now. I know I go on and on, but I'll say so we have a lot of books, 70 books in the library. We've covered certainly not all the intro courses. We don't have arts, we don't have education, we don't have engineering, we don't have criminal justice, but we are looking to expand. We have number of books publishing too, and we are starting to go a little bit up in the curriculum. So we have the intro psychology textbook for that, that very large intro course, but we're also publishing lifespan, developmental psych, and actually a neuroscience. And the neuroscience was maybe a little bit like this, what you mentioned in terms of niche, because this was a project that kind of came out of Ohio State, was NSF funded. And we were able to collaborate with them. They did the development all on their own, and then we helped with the peer review process and then the publication process, and we were able to sort of do that in a funded way. In terms of what the cost is, it really varies. Depends all on like what we're, how it's coming in, what format it's in. Everything has to be converted to XML. We have to see about the art. There's really such an enormous range. So it's pretty extensive, but very glad to dig in, if we could, learn a little bit more about it. So, Thank you so much.
Thank you all. I know we're a little over time, so I just
Oh, I
wanted
didn't
to
realize that. I'm sorry.
no, there's so much information to share. No, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. If folks have any other questions, you can always send an email to me or Anthony. There are such great questions in the chat. Thank you all so much for listening. I knew we threw a lot of information at you. So if you ever have any other questions or need anything from us, please feel free to contact us. We're more than happy to help. And thank you again so much for attending today. We really, really appreciate the chance to speak with everyone.
Yes, thanks so much. Thank you, Lindsay. Thanks, everybody.